Andreas Perez is out of Spire Motorsports effective immediately and will join NIS Motorsports for the remainder of the season. And Heim could be an outside candidate to join Spire Motorsports in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at some paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2025 Winchester Bass Pro scheme that I believe we're going to see this weekend at Richmond. Honestly, car looks really solid in my opinion. I like the mix of the Winchester Bass Pro. It looks really good. Looking forward to on the racetrack at Richmond. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is AJ Allmendinger's 2025 Blacks Tire scheme that we'll see this weekend at Richmond. I like this quite a bit, very similar to the Christian Eckes one we saw earlier this year at Rockingham. I think the colors on it look really good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Richmond. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Gragson's 2025 Armor Guard scheme that we'll see this weekend at Richmond. I really like this car a lot. Noah Gragson's had some good ones, some not so great ones, but I think this is one of the better ones Noah Gragson's had. The colors work very well on this car, and I think it looks really solid and really, really good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Dillon's 2025 DraftKings scheme that we'll see in 2 NASCAR Cup races in 2025, including at Gateway. I really like this. It's cool seeing that DraftKings is joining up with Kaulig Racing that got picked up from 2311. I think the car looks solid. It looks really good, and I think Kaulig knocked this one out of the park. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2025 body armor scheme that we'll see, I believe, this weekend at Richmond. I'm going to be honest, this is one of my least favorite body armor schemes that we've seen from Ryan Blaney. We've seen some nice looking ones. This one's a little bit of a downgrade for me. I think they could have done a better job on this one, but it's so good to see that body armor is really associated closely with Ryan Blaney. And a final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Corey LaJoie's 2025 Gamebridge scheme that we'll see in the Truck Series race on Friday night at Richmond. Honestly, it looks kind of similar to one that Kyle Busch has had at times, Michael McDowell's had at times, Carson Hocefar's had at times. It looks very similar to those, but I think it's a decent looking truck. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Richmond. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pie Barker. As it was announced earlier today that Pie Barker will be returning to Legacy Motor Club in 2026 as a sponsor for John Hunter Nemechek, confirming that John Hunter will be back behind the wheel of the number 42 car in 2026 as they will sponsor for 14 races next year. I don't believe the races were disclosed, but Pie Barker's been a loyal sponsor of John Hunter since around 2021 when, of course, he joined the Craftsman Truck Series for KBM. They've been very loyal to him the last couple years, so it's good to see that loyalty continuing into 2026, and it's probably going to continue going forward and beyond as well. Really good to see this news, and pretty happy to see that Pie Barker once again continue working with Legacy Motor Club next year. They've had a really good working relationship with John Hunter, and they'll stick around at least for the next couple of years, and at least for 2026 as well. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, we got a couple of Shane Van Gisbergen stories to talk about today on the channel. The first one revolves around his margins. As reported by the NASCAR Insights account, I believe on Monday early morning, that Shane Van Gisbergen has the 2 largest margins of victory in the NextGen era so far. He had a 16.567 second margin at Mexico City earlier this year, and at Watkins Glen this past weekend, he had 11.116 margin of victory as well. SVG has been dominant in road courses for a car that everyone expects to be much, much closer. It's been really impressive to see SVG continue to do really impressive things on the road courses this year. And to have the 2 largest margins of victories is impressive. He is also only the second driver in the modern era to have 2 races with 10 or more seconds. The only other driver to do that was Mark Truex Jr. back in 2018, but I believe at Auto Club in Kentucky. I think what SVG's been doing was impressive and good to see him continue to break records on his own way currently at this moment. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Iowa and Watkins Glen. As was reported by NASCAR Insights account, I believe today or yesterday, that for Iowa and Watkins Glen, there were 0 DNFs during both of those races. This is the first time in NASCAR Cup Series history with 2 consecutive races with 0 DNFs. Obviously, the action has not been too crazy. We've seen some incidents and carnage on the racetrack at times at tracks like Iowa and Watkins Glen as well, where Kyle Larson kind of fell out of the race a little early, but he got back in the race and got back in the event as well before the end. And there just hasn't been too much chaos of guys falling out. We've seen a lot of attrition at times in the next-gen car, but it's not been extremely consistent on the attrition side of things and the attrition factor as well. So I think it's certainly interesting for sure. I think we're going to continue seeing more attrition. I think we'll probably get back to normal this week and at Richmond, considering we can see chaos from time to time. But nonetheless, we haven't seen a lot of that attrition and a lot of chaos we kind of come to expect with the next-gen car. And we've had 0 DNS the last couple weeks in the Cup Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR Classics. As they announced earlier today that 4 new races have been uploaded to the NASCAR Classics page. This includes the Cup Series race at Dover very recently. This also includes the 2003 Auto Club 500. I believe the 2003 early Richmond race, the Pontiac Excitement 400. And I believe another race like Chicagoland was uploaded as well. Say what you want to say about NASCAR. We'll talk about a lot of criticism I have for the next-gen car soon. But one thing they've done a really good job on is the Classics page. That's one of the big positives I think it's come out of NASCAR recently. I hope we kind of get some more Xfinity Series races and Truck Series races really soon. I'm really pushing for that at this point. And some races from the 1970s and 1980s as well. I'd like to see the catalog over 2,000 races by this time next year. I think that'd be really cool if that could happen. But I think they've been doing an excellent and really good job with the NASCAR Classics page overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tyler Tomasi. As it was announced earlier today that Tyler Tomasi will drive the 69 for NBM Motorsports in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Talladega in October. What's really cool about this is that LA Productions once again will sponsor Tyler Tomasi for the second time this year. Remember, he actually sponsored Tyler Tomasi in the Craftsman Truck Series race at Bristol when he drove for Raymond Brothers and made the field for that event. He was supposed to sponsor him in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Bristol, but unfortunately they failed to qualify for that event due to some sort of electrical gum and a mechanical issue before qualifying even happened in the first place. And now there's an opportunity for him to work with Tyler once again. I've been a big fan of LA's Productions content. He's been amazing on YouTube for the last year or so, last couple years I should say, and he's one of the best NASCAR YouTubers we have currently at the moment. I think he's a new age slap shoes when it comes to content like this, and that's really high praise coming from me. And I think it's pretty cool that someone like Tyler Tomasi, who I think is a talented driver, who I've seen him get best out of equipment from time to time, I think he's going to have a solid chance and opportunity to be really good at NBM next weekend, or in a little bit down the road at Talladega. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Caleb Koster. As it was announced yesterday that Caleb Koster will make his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut this weekend at Richmond. He'll drive the number 74 for Mike Harmon Racing. This will be, I believe, the second or third start for Mike Harmon Racing in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this year, though there will be one truck that will go home, and I'm a little worried about the Mike Harmon Racing truck. Now, Caleb Koster has been a staple in the ARCA Series over the course of the last couple of years. He's been racing there for, I believe, the last 5 or 6 years at this point, and while he doesn't always run up front on a consistent basis, he does get the best out of equipment from time to time and doesn't tear up or trash equipment, and I think he's going to be someone that can do that. So that's something we look for in a series at this point. He can be consistent and get decent finishes, and I expect him to try his best to run really, really well. We'll see if the Mike Harmon Racing truck can run really, really well this weekend at Richmond Raceway in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matthew Gold. As it was announced earlier this week that Matthew Gold will drive the number 41 for Nice Motorsports in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this weekend at Richmond Raceway. Matthew Gold, I believe, has made 1 or 2 starts so far in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025. That name is going to sound familiar because, of course, he's made previous Truck Series starts before for Nice Motorsports, but he is a son of Phil Gold, who is a crew chief currently at the moment for the 45 truck that is being used by Bailey Curry for the most of the remainder of the season. Matthew's made a couple starts before. I think he is a decent driver. He's not someone who I expect to set the world on fire in that truck because Nice has been very inconsistent. Their best driver recently left and will be going over to Toyota next year, most likely with Tricon, which we'll talk about here in just a short little bit. But I do think this is a good pickup for the team. I really think Matthew's got talent. He's a solid short track guy. We'll see how he can do, and we'll see if he can bring some really solid pace and good speed. I think he's got a shot and opportunity to do very, very solid. We'll see what he can do this weekend in the Truck Series event with Nice. They've shown some decent speed. We'll see if they can provide that good speed this weekend at Richmond Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the IndyCar Portland TV ratings. As reported by Fox Sports earlier today, that Fox earned 708,000 viewers for the IndyCar race at Portland on Fox. That is up, I believe, about 10 to 12% from 2024, where I believe the race only got under 700,000 viewers in 2024. Now, keep this in mind, the star of the race from Portland actually started on FS1, where I believe they put out there that only 151,000 people tuned into the first 6 laps of the event because Live Golf kind of went a little bit longer than they kind of expected. IndyCar tried to push the start back to try to get the best rating possible, and they still missed the early portion of the event. That is a decent number, all things considered. Obviously, a long-term goal for IndyCar is to grow with the Fox partnership. They had a little bit of their first fumble. They haven't really had a ton of fumbles with Fox, which is shocking and surprising considering all the fumbles they've had with NASCAR as of late. But I gotta say, I think that number is a solid number. Is it spectacular by any stretch of imagination? No, but it's good to see people are tuning in to Fox and tuning into IndyCar. I really hope that number can grow throughout the remainder of this year and can get a couple good weeks. We, of course, have IndyCar next week in Milwaukee, which there's maybe a little uncertainty around that, though they're saying they're probably not going to have issues with that on that front. We'll see how they can do in the future, but I think it's decent viewership for the IndyCar race at Portland. Decent numbers for IndyCar, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sammy Smith. As it was announced yesterday that Sammy Smith will drive the 7 truck for Spire Motorsports this weekend in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Richmond. And one of his big sponsors, I believe Pilot Flying J, will also sponsor him this weekend in the Truck Series race as well. This, I believe, will be the second consecutive start for Sammy Smith in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, as of course he raced last week at Watkins Glen, where he actually had a pretty solid run. I believe he actually finished in 3rd position in last weekend's race at Watkins Glen. Now, Sammy Smith, of course, is driving his car or truck because he does have the connection with Junior Motorsports, and Spire is very closely aligned with Hendrick, and Junior Motorsports is also very highly aligned with Hendrick as well. And then, of course, you have, of course, the fact that they are really high in the Chevy camp at this point. I think Sammy Smith is a decent short track guy. He's shown some really good speed at tracks like Martinsville. I don't remember his numbers at Richmond before, but this 7 truck has shown some decent speed at points this year. But I do not expect Sammy Smith to set the world on fire this weekend at Richmond. I think he's going to have top 10 speed because we've seen Carson Osbar do well. We've seen Kyle Busch win in this truck. We've seen Kyle Larson, the 07 truck, which no longer exists at this point, that we'll talk about here in just a short little bit. But I do think that Sammy could be in for a solid run. We'll see what he can do this weekend, and we'll see if this team can provide some really good pace for the weekend at Richmond. I think Spire could have a decent chance and opportunity to run well, but we'll see how they do, and we'll see if they can perform this weekend in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Richmond. We'll see if they have the pace to contend for the overall win. Lane Riggs and Corey Heim are the absolute favorites to win. I think Kaden Honeycutt's going to be really good with Homer Friesen starting this weekend. We'll see if this team can run really well at Richmond. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Donnie Schatz. As it was shockingly announced earlier today that Donnie Schatz has officially parted ways with Tony Stewart Racing in the World of Outlaws effective immediately. And Kerry Matson is going to take over for the remainder of the season in the number 15 car. This is definitely maybe one of the most shocking things we have seen in the World of Outlaws because Donnie Schatz has been with Tony Stewart Racing since 2007. He's been there for almost 20 years at this point. In a majority of his World of Outlaws and sprint car career, he has been with TSR. When you associate Tony Stewart Racing, you associate Donnie Schatz with that. So when it was announced that this was going to be happening earlier today, I was absolutely flabbergasted and stunned because this is a partnership that you don't expect to break up. Just like a few years ago in NASCAR when it was announced that Kyle Busch would not be back with Joe Gibbs Racing for the 2023 season and would be going to RCR. This would be like Jeff Gordon leaving Hendrick Motorsports, which never, of course, ended up happening. Or Jimmy Johnson leaving Hendrick Motorsports and going to Legacy Motor Club and going to Chip Ganassi and IndyCar. Something like this is really, really shocking, but the last couple of years, this team has been on a little bit of a downward spot. From what I know, the number of wins has not been that great for the organization. Donnie Schatz has not been producing very, very well with the team. And sometimes when your performance is not as good, sometimes you have to break up the duo and make some changes. Now, many people are blaming the crew chief for the team because the crew chief has never won before in the World of Outlaws, so some are blaming that. And Tony Stewart, of course, has been really focused on the NHRA in the last couple of years. And a lot of things that Tony Stewart has associated with have unfortunately been kind of going down the gutter in recent years. Obviously, ASOC is no longer existing. High Limit bought that up recently. And, of course, other big things like Stewart Haas Racing, which no longer exists as well. That's been gone for a little bit. So I think that there definitely is a conversation about whether Tony managing certain things is causing some of the issues with maybe why. We'll see if Kerry Madsen can come in and run really well, but it's definitely surprising to see that Donnie Schatz is no longer there and no longer driving for Tony Stewart Racing. It's unknown what he'll be doing for the remainder of the year, what rides he'll end up driving for. We'll find that out here really soon, and we'll see if he does have a ride for the remainder of 2025, and we'll see what happens also for 2026. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Quaffle. As it was announced yesterday that Carson Quaffle will make his first Craftsman Truck Series start of the 2025 season, as Carson Quaffle will drive the number 97 for CR7 Motorsports this weekend at Richmond. Now, the 97 truck will have to qualify in on owner's points because the 97 truck does not have a ton of owner's points currently at the moment, but they've got a really good driver getting behind the wheel. Carson Quaffle, of course, has been full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this season, has honestly had some really good runs, especially on short tracks this year. We all remember that really good run he had at Bristol where he finished in second in the event, and we've seen CR7 Motorsports at times at the short tracks run really, really well with Grant Enfinger. Remember last year, Grant Enfinger had a really, really strong truck and showed some really good pace and speed at Richmond last year. And I would expect the same for Carson Quaffle. What are my realistic expectations for Carson Quaffle going into this weekend, however? I think he's going to have a top 10 truck for sure, and I would not be surprised if Carson goes out there and contends for the win in victory. I mentioned this with Sammy Smith. There's going to be a lot of really big competition in this race. You're going to have Lane Riggs running. You're going to have other people running like Ty Majeski going to be good. Kaden Honeycutt's going to be really, really good. Again, Corey Heim has been extremely dominant. And Chandler Smith, where both his wins have come on short tracks like North Wilkesboro and Martins and Bristol earlier this year. So I think Carson will have really, really good speed. I think he's going to have a really, really good truck this week. And again, CR7 Motorsports has shown some really solid pace and really strong speed throughout the 2025 season. They have not been as strong as other seasons, though, but I expect them to be very, very good. I expect the pace and speed to be there this weekend with the program, and I do think there's a really good chance and opportunity for Carson maybe to go out there and get his first Truck Series win. He's still looking for his first Xfinity Series win at this point. But I think he's going to have a solid chance and a pretty strong and good opportunity to be really strong and really competitive when we get out to the racetrack this weekend at Richmond. I expect that truck to be solid this weekend, and we'll see if they can run very, very good at the track coming up very, very soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Watkins Glen viewership from this past weekend. As Jeff Gluck put out earlier today, the viewership for all three series, for the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series from Watkins Glen. Let's begin by talking about the Truck Series first. According to Jeff Gluck on FS1, that only got 253,000 viewers. That is one of the least watched Truck Series races that we have probably ever seen in a very, very long time. It's way down even compared to the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. That number is not very good, and there's obvious reasons for that. Number one, road course numbers don't generally go very, very well for the Truck Series in particular. But number two, the commentary just has been terrible for Fox. I've said this for a while. Fox absolutely needs a reality check, and they need to overhaul when it comes to their commentary currently at the moment because the broadcasts have been terrible for Fox, and more people are going to MRN currently at the moment to listen to the races than watching them on TV because the Truck Series is just unwatchable with the commentary and the issues with production and the camera work, among other things. It just doesn't seem like Fox cares about the Truck Series, and it's on the back burner compared to other networks, and this has been an issue with Fox for a while, and their network and their coverage has just not been very, very good in recent years. Moving on to the Xfinity Series. This is the only series that really has a big positive from this weekend. As Xfinity scored 1.096 million viewers in 2025. That is up, I believe, double digits from 2024 and continues to be another race over 1 million viewers. I believe only 2 or 3 races this year through the first 22 or 23 Xfinity Series races have gone over. Only 2 races have gone under 1 million so far this year. So this continues an upward trend. It does help that the Xfinity Series is being consistently on the same place. When you have a series in the same consistent place, there's an opportunity for the series to grow. And plus, the racing in Xfinity has been really, really good. And when you look at the road course racing in particular, the racing has just been much better in Xfinity compared to the NASCAR Cup Series. So I'm really happy to see that the Xfinity Series continues to grow at the rate it is. I think you're going to see that number continue to grow as they get more people have the CW and they get the opportunity to try to get the app up and running. That's a big thing we're waiting on at this point. But I do think the viewership for this weekend at Watkins Glen is solid. I think it peaked at 1.2 to 1.3 million, so the viewership is pretty solid for this weekend in Xfinity. Moving on to the Cup Series. This is a big negative. According to Jeff Gluck, it only had 1.85 million viewers in 2025. Now, that number is actually very similar to the number from 2024. In fact, it's up about 1 or 2% from last year. But that was due to an NFL game happening during that time, and that was in September. There was not many NFL games going on that affected networks during the weekend at Watkins Glen, and this is another race under 2 million viewers. That is not very good in my opinion. Having under 2 million viewers for a NASCAR Cup Series race is pretty unacceptable if you ask me. And I'll kind of bring up something we'll talk about later. A lot of it has to do with this car. Racing with this next-gen car is not very good on the road courses currently at the moment, and less people are interested racing on road courses, and that's one thing that's being backed off of at this point. So I really hope that we see better racing in the future. I think the Cup number could go up for this weekend at Richmond, though it's a Saturday night, and Saturday night numbers have not done very well and haven't done wonders for the Cup Series recently. So I really hope things can get better for the Cup Series in the future. We had over 2 million people, I think, tune in the race at Iowa, so maybe the number can be better for this weekend, but hopefully it can get better, and hopefully it will get better here very soon for the series very soon. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about road courses in Shane-Van-Gisbergen once again. So there has been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion around road course racing in the next-gen era and the next-gen car as well. And trust me, we'll talk about the next-gen car here in the second half of this episode. But there was a big talking point coming from Jeff Gluck talking about it after the teardown, and Jeff Gluck got a lot of people talking. He basically said that we need to reduce the amount of road courses that are on the schedule currently at the moment, and we should probably reduce it down to 2 or 3 road course races altogether. Now, he does bring up a very good point that one of the reasons is because this car is not really good racing on them at road courses, but it's because Shane-Van-Gisbergen has been coming in and syncing up the show. I got to 100% disagree with Jeff Gluck, and there's a couple reasons why I disagree. Number one, yeah, Shane-Van-Gisbergen is dominating road course races. That is 100% true. But should we get rid of super speedways? We didn't get rid of super speedways back when guys like Dale Jr. were dominating them, when guys like Jeff Gordon were dominating. We didn't get rid of road courses when Jeff Gordon went on 6 wins in a row from 1997 to 2000 or something like that, when he won 6 of those straight. And then, of course, when Tony Stewart won a lot, no one complained about that. When Chase Elliott won 4 road course races in a row, nobody was backing off for that. And if you want to talk about the number of road courses, I don't think 6 road courses is honestly too many road courses on the schedule. The tracks are not the problem. You know what the problem actually is? The next-gen car. The next-gen car race is not good at road courses, but guess what? It also doesn't race really well at oval tracks. It races not that good at super speedways outside of Atlanta Motor Speedway. So you got 2 out of 6 super speedway races that is good currently at the moment, and you've got no short tracks that are consistently very good. So should we get rid of short tracks because racing's not good there? Should we get rid of super speedways because racing's not good there? I don't think so. And 6 races is not even 25% of the schedule. It's not even 20% for that matter when you add extra exhibition events. So I don't want to hear people saying we should reduce the amount of road course on the schedule. And guess what? You're probably going to get your wish, because there's probably only going to be 5 on the schedule next year from what people are saying. Again, it is not Shane-Van-Gisbergen's fault that he is so good at road course racing. People say, well, he's only good because of the V8 supercar. Let me remind you, he's won multiple GT championships in Europe. He won the Blank Pan GT championship in 2016 and nearly won the Rolex 24 in GTD in 2015. You know the year that Kyle Larson won the overall race in 2015. Yes, Shane-Van-Gisbergen finished second in the GTD class that year. Shane-Van-Gisbergen might just be good, because guys like Boris said, Ron Fellows, Will Brown have not stepped up and run great at them at this point. Cam Waters hasn't won at them. Jensen Bunn hasn't won at them. There's not a lot of road course guys who've excelled at these types of tracks. It's been Shane-Van-Gisbergen who's been the best at this point. Again, it's not Shane-Van-Gisbergen's fault that we have a car that doesn't race very good at road courses. It's too good for them. And everyone's just got to step up and get better. It's not his fault. He's dominating. He's been exceptional and been very good at road course races in general. And I think that's going to continue until people step up. And unless Connor Zilisch comes in and does really good, who we'll talk about here in just a second, I don't see anything changing. I think the domination is going to continue. And at this point, we should embrace it and be excited that SVG is doing really good in his career on road courses at this point. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. As it was announced earlier today, and Connor Zilisch did confirm earlier this afternoon as well, that he officially had surgery on his collarbone, and surgery went well for Connor Jones. Now, a timetable has not been announced on how long Connor Zilisch is going to be out at this point. Bob Parker did know he'd be surprised if he'd be racing at Daytona International Speedway, but we'll kind of get to that in just a minute. Let's go back to what happened earlier this week. So, Connor Zilisch, of course, picked up his 6th NASCAR Xfinity Series win of 2025 and his 7th career Xfinity Series win and 7 wins basically in the last year alone. And Connor Zilisch, after winning the race at Watkins Glen, had a major freak accident. Going up and celebrating, there was a lot of sponsor stuff on top of the car. He tripped on the window net, it looked like, and he fell down and unfortunately broke his collarbone. He got sent into a stretcher, basically got taken to a local hospital, and was basically let out of the hospital, and then had, unfortunately, the collarbone injury. And like I mentioned, he had surgery on that. There's been a lot of speculation on this at this point on whether he will be back quickly or it'll take some time for him to return. Obviously, there is no NASCAR Xfinity Series race this weekend at Richmond. They are off for the weekend. The next Xfinity Series race is next weekend at Daytona International Speedway. At this point, I don't think he is going to run the whole race. It wouldn't even be surprising if he doesn't run at all. But there is an outside chance he may at least start the event at Daytona. And here is why. If you start the race at Daytona, you get awarded points. And Connor Zilisch then can send it off to relief driver. So I would expect for sure, at least for Daytona, for him to start the race at Daytona and then give up the ride to somebody else like a Jeff Earnhardt or someone in the Chevy camp at this point. And then, of course, we'll talk about Portland. Portland, I would expect him to run. He's a really good road course guy. Yes, Will Brown's going to be in that race, and other guys like Jack Perkins are going to be in. But I expect him to run that race at Portland, though it could hurt. But we've seen other guys race with a collarbone injury and be pretty successful. So I think he's going to run at least for sure in that event. In general, for Connor Zilisch, I'm glad to see that he's been taking it in stride. The hospital is kind of making jokes in him, which I found to be really funny and hilarious. And I know that a lot of people have been giving him a hard time, but I got to give Connor Zilisch a lot of credit. He's been handling this situation really, really fun, and there's been a lot of fun things to come out of it. I mean, he's been getting a ton of attention on social media. I think his post from earlier today, last time I checked, the quote Ben Davis, who's involved with the Misfits group over there with boxing KSI owns, that's gotten like 300,000 likes on Twitter, which is absolutely incredible. Connor's becoming a household name. TMZ's talking about him. And I think that's really important for someone like Connor, who I think is someone that really can attract a younger demographic of people that come into the sport, which I think is so important right now to get that younger demographic. So I think he's been doing it fun. He's been funny to listen to, and I think he's just enjoying himself a lot more, which is really, really good to see. So I'm glad to see that for sure, and I'm glad to see he's not taking it hard. He's taking it in stride and having a lot of fun with the stuff. It's an unfortunate situation will happen, but he's been doing a really good job taking it with stride, and we'll probably see him back on the racetrack really soon. He's obviously going to be going Cup Series racing next year with Trackhouse Racing, and that announcement probably will be coming here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we have another update on NASCAR and the update on the 2311 in Front Row Motorsports lawsuit. As on Monday, it was announced that Judge Kenneth Bell has denied a NASCAR motion for a show cause order to basically prevent the teams from doing something, I'm pretty sure, in regards to basically getting involved with other things at this point. Now, the judge, Kenneth Bell, also said that third parties need to get involved when it comes to litigation, and they need to focus on the lawsuit overall. What Judge Kenneth Bell seems like he's trying to insinuate is that NASCAR is really trying to go past their grasp at this point, and that NASCAR is trying to play a little bit too hardball at this point in regards to the lawsuit to try to convince the judge to give them the win of this lawsuit at this point. And Judge Kenneth Bell's like, no, we're getting tired of this distraction. Let's focus on the antitrust lawsuit at this point. He also, like I mentioned, once they have the third parties involved, they try to begin some sort of litigation and find a way to get to litigation at this point instead of going all the way to the trial. Judge Kenneth Bell has stated multiple times that he'd rather have this whole thing settled at this point than other things that happen. Remember, the big thing to kind of pay attention to with the lawsuit is what's going to happen, of course, with the preliminary injunction. Obviously, 27 Front Row filed for another round of preliminary injunction so they can't compete as charter teams for the remainder of the season. But NASCAR, of course, changed the rules very recently, so that's a big thing to watch out for at the end of this month. That's actually next week, as a matter of fact, when the deadline is going to come up, and the judge will make the decision if he'll deny them having charters, which will mean that those charters will go away. There's a very good chance and possibly then that NASCAR could sell those charters off to another team and organization. Teams like RFK are interested. Teams like Legacy are interested in expanding the three-car operations. That could affect that rumor of Haas and Legacy maybe having some sort of merger going into next year. I think that certainly is a possibility at this point, and among other things that could happen really, really soon as well. which could have effect on drivers on the program like Noah Gragson, Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Riley Hurst, Zane Smith, Todd Gillen, and Corey Heim as well, who we'll talk about here in just a short little bit. It could have a big effect on that. Outside of that, there's not been a lot of updates with the lawsuit at this point. I'm just kind of waiting for the preliminary injunction to come out at this point in the ruling. There's been so much NASCAR stuff that I think a lot of people are just kind of getting tired of covering this at this point, and I think we're all just waiting for a resolution of what's going to happen with the lawsuit at this point. As I talk about it quite a bit, but I'm ready to kind of move on toward that at this point, and I really hope we can kind of move toward that direction with the lawsuit really, really soon. Can focus more on trying to figure out a resolution all around with the lawsuit. I think the preliminary injunction is going to be important, and then once we get through the whole discovery process at this point, I think that's going to be the big thing to watch. So we'll see what happens in regards to that, and we'll see if we get a resolution on the lawsuit soon. Are we? Who knows at this point? I think there's a chance we will soon. We'll have to kind of wait and see what happens in regards to that here in the not-so-distant future, if we will get a resolution very, very soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the next-gen car once again. We've already talked about the road course racing with the next-gen car, but there's been a lot of talk about this next-gen car over the course of the last couple weeks. I think many of you have kind of seen it, right? The next-gen racing has been very lackluster or mediocre throughout a lot of races this year, but over the last couple weeks, the racing itself has just not been very good. I think since around Atlanta Motor Speedway earlier this year, where we had an all-time great race, a lot of races as of late have just not been great. Chicago was fine, but it wasn't great. Sonoma was okay, but wasn't a great race, but Sonoma hasn't been fantastic. Other races like Pocono weren't that great in my opinion, and then you had races like Iowa that were very lackluster. No tire fall off whatsoever. Just not great racing. The Brickyard had a great storyline with Bubba Wallace picking up the win in victory, but the racing there just wasn't that great overall. It was a fuel mileage race the whole time. And then Iowa happened, which was not a good race. And then you had Watkins Gumball. It was cool to see Shane Van Gisbergen dominate the event. The racing throughout the whole entire event was just not that good, in my opinion. Well, Kyle Petty, who is someone that is not afraid to speak their opinion on things, talked about the next-gen car and pretty much went on to praise the next-gen car by basically saying that the next-gen cars had a lot of innovation, and we should basically can't go back in the past and go back to a car that worked a little bit better. And we should absolutely embrace what we have at this point and not go back and kind of glamour for other cars. I 1000% disagree with Kyle Petty here. I respect Kyle Petty for stating his opinion, but I think his opinion is just dead wrong at this point. Because the next-gen car, yes, we can have all the innovation all we want to. What does it mean, though, for the racing product? A lot of the innovations and the technologies that's been added to the next-gen car has not made the racing better. We have seen more dirty air issues with this next-gen car over the last couple of years. The short track racing has suffered because of it. Outside of Atlanta, most of super speedway racing has suffered because of it. The road course racing has not been good. Short tracks, for the most part, have not been good. And even tracks like the intermediates, the bigger mile and a half, are starting to suffer a little bit more because of that. And Kyle Petty going on later and saying, oh, we need to have patience with the next-gen car. Kyle, we are on year 4 of this car being on the track of racing, and we've been developing this car now since 2018/2019. That's been almost a decade since we've seen this car out on the racetrack in some way, shape, or form, whether it's testing or racing. The fans are asking for change. There is so much that needs to be done with this next-gen car that it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to do. And I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting tired of the people in the industry and people in the media, regardless of who it is, whether it's drivers, former people, former crew chiefs, defending this next-gen car. We genuinely have a major car problem currently at the moment, and the racing has suffered because of it, and the fans have had to suffer as well. And I'm getting tired of all these delusional people in the industry, because this is really the only sport that I see this where people will outright defend this stuff. We've got to get this car better. We have to get the racing better. They're saying they did testing with the horsepower, but people in DBC are saying that it's not really helped anything at this point, because this car is absolutely broken right now. There's a lot that needs to be done with this next-gen car. It's so broken, it's getting frustrating as a fan. I'm already ready for the off-season at this point, and we're in August. I've been a fan of the sport for almost 20 years at this point, and I want the racing to be better. I get that everyone's like, oh, we can't go back to 1999. Well, guess what? The racing is better in 1999 than it is now. I'm just going to say that. It was definitely a lot better because you got a lot closer racing, a lot better racing, where actually you could pass, among other things. You can't pass with this car. The dirty air is terrible, and there's so many fundamental issues and fundamental flaws with the next-gen car. And I really can't stand people like Kyle Petty trying to praise this next-gen car when the car is clearly broken. There's so much that needs to be done. The fans are upset, like myself. We're frustrated, and we want things to get better. And it seems like NASCAR is not willing to do that, which is really irritating and getting tiring, and I'm getting sick of it, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Spire Motorsports. Now, there was a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation around Spire Motorsports' future in NASCAR for 2026. And trust me, we'll get to the big Corey Heim news around that potentially in just a short little bit. But one rumor that has circulated over the last couple weeks is that Spire Motorsports may be shutting down their Craftsman Truck Series program for the 2026 season and may be headed to the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. The rumor was that Spire Motorsports is going to be buying a partnership in the Colin Racing for the 2026 year, and they will be selling off a lot of their stuff over to Colin Racing, while Colin Racing may go down to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series next year and form up with the Dodge program for 2026. However, it was reported by Bob Parkers yesterday, and Breakart brought this up on his channel as well. It does not sound like the Spire Motorsports will be going to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2026. It also sounds like maybe some of the drivers from Spire might be making some starts next year with the program, or at least with another team and organization for next year, but they'll be sticking in the Truck Series for sure in 2026. Now, Spire Motorsports is expecting to downsize their program for 2026. They will, of course, I would expect to have 3 trucks for the 2026 season, but it's disappointing to hear this news because I absolutely would have loved to see Spire Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. They, of course, have raced in the Xfinity Series before. It's been almost 3 years since they last race, where they had Carson Hocevar drive the number 77 car in select races before he moved up to the Cup Series full-time in 2024, where he's been pretty solid with the team and program. In Xfinity, he actually showed some good speed, and Hendrick really helped that program out in a really solid and a really positive way. But also at the same time, that's why it's called silly season at this point, right? Because a lot of chaos and a lot of crazy things can happen with the silly season in a lot of major and crazy ways. So I absolutely think that this is disappointing to hear, but it's also not the most shocking and surprising news in general. Now, with Spire Motorsports, what happens with the program? Well, obviously, we already talked about it. Spire Motorsports has already downsized their program to 3 trucks for the remainder of this year, and I would expect that to be the case for 2026 as well. I would think the number 7 truck will be the all-star truck for 2026. I would have to think you'll probably see Kyle Busch make a few starts once again. Michael McDowell might make a few starts. I expect him to return to Spire Motorsports next year. Carson Hocevar and Justin Haley also will likely be behind the wheel of the trucks next year. And then, of course, I would expect maybe others like a Corey Day to make a few more starts. He could also be in Xfinity next year on a full-time basis, but I would think he might make a few starts also as well. And I would think Kyle Larson, maybe Chase Elliott, maybe William Byron also could get behind the wheel at that point. Meanwhile, for the other 2 trucks, I would think Roger Curve will be full-time once again in truck competition. I think it'd be cool to see Roger maybe get an opportunity and chance to maybe make some starts in the Xfinity Series next year, but I think it's very likely he will potentially stay in the Truck Series next year. And then finally, the final truck, which is 77, I would have to think it could be a potential candidate spot for Corey LaJoie if he doesn't go to Rick Ware next year. But I also think there's another driver that could be a candidate, and that's Brendan Butterbean Queen. Brendan drove the 07 truck not too long ago, and Brendan is a very, very talented race car driver who I know wants to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series or the Truck Series next year, and I think it'd be really cool for someone like him to get that chance and opportunity to move up, and I think he'd be absolutely ready for the challenge. I know he didn't run super, super well in the 07 at IRP, but I think that's been a 07 truck issue more than anything else. So I think I would be predicting more than likely to get a promotion next year if they do have 3 trucks. So we'll see what happens going into the 2026 year at this particular moment and point, but I think there's definitely a possibility on that we'll see that movement happen. Again, it's disappointing here. The Spire will not be in the Craftsman Truck Series, will not be going up Xfinity Racing, but they'll be sticking around next year at trucks, and they'll probably likely have 3 trucks for the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series year and season. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Andreas Perez. As it was officially announced yesterday, Andreas Perez is out of Spire Motorsports effective immediately. He will no longer drive the number 77 truck for the remainder of 2025. However, Andreas Perez has found a ride for the remainder of the 2025 season as he'll drive the number 44 truck for Nice Motorsports for the remainder of this season, taking over the 44 truck from Bailey Curry, Ross Chastain, as those drivers have moved to the 45 and the 41 truck for the remainder of the year. Connor Jones and a couple other drivers like Matthew Gold will drive the 41 truck, including Josh Blicky, for the remainder of 2025. And there's also been a crew chief reshuffling that has happened at this point as well. Meanwhile, the 07 truck for Spire Motorsports is also shutting down for the remainder of this season. The 07, which has had drivers like Kyle Larson, other people like Carson Osbar, I believe, Michael McDowell, Justin Haley, and Kyle Busch have driven that truck, including Corey LaJoie as well. All those drivers will drive the number 77. In fact, Corey LaJoie actually will drive the 77 truck for the remainder of the 2025 season in the last 8 races of the year. This obviously has been rumored and speculated over the course of the last couple weeks. This very likely was going to happen. We thought this was going to get announced at Indianapolis Raceway Park. They'd be downsizing their program, and now it's officially been announced and confirmed. Now, Andreas Perez is getting a solid opportunity with Nice Motorsports, and I think that 44 truck will have some decent pace and speed, but I think this definitely is a little bit of a downgrade for Andres compared to what he drove earlier this year. But I will say the 77 truck has been the weakest truck so far this year. And what's a shame about this for Andres is I don't think Andres has been very, very good. I thought he'd be a lot closer to Gio Rogerio in the points, not going to lie. But I think Andres is a decent driver and is someone that has shown some decent runs in okay equipment. I don't think Spire Motorsports is the team they've been in prior seasons. The farthest up of the Spire trucks is 5th in the owner's points currently at the moment, which has had Cup drivers like Carson Hocevar, Kyle Larson behind the wheel, Kyle Busch has driven that truck, Corey Day's driven that truck. Cup guys have driven that truck and have ran better because guess what? Cup guys tend to run really good in good equipment. Gee, who could figure that out at this point? I think that this is not shocking and surprising, though, unfortunately, with the rumors of Spire, though, of course, Spire will be staying in trucks next year. I don't think they ever should have had 4 trucks to begin with. The 07 was actually originally supposed to be a part-time truck this year. It seemed like that changed throughout the year. I don't know why that changed, to be honest, because I think that really, unfortunately, affected the program. I think downsizing to 3 trucks is the one that makes the most sense, and kind of replacing the original truck that was the slowest in the field makes a lot of sense at this point. I would not be surprised if Andreas Perez is full-time in the NASCAR Truck Series next year with Nice Motorsports, considering Nice Motorsports is going to be looking for someone who brings sponsorship and funding to the table. And say what you want to say about Andres. Andres does bring a lot of funding and sponsorship to the table, which I think is going to help that team in a really big way throughout the remainder of the year with Telcel coming in. And no offense to Kaden Honeycutt, but Andres does bring sponsorship in. But Andres is definitely a downgrade compared to Kaden, who actually contended for wins and ran pretty good. Meanwhile, you had a guy like Andres, and again, this is no disrespect. Yes, he won the ARCA Championship in 2024, but let's not forget, he didn't win a single race. Now, granted, he drove for Rev Racing. Rev Racing is not the fastest organization in the world. They're not like the Pinnacle Racing Groups of the world. They're certainly not like Venturini, who won't even be a team next year if Nitro Motorsports taking that program over, also helping Burn Cruz Motorsports in the Truck Series currently at the moment. And you think about Joe Gibbs Racing, who's had drivers like Max Reeves go to victory lane, and of course, we've seen Brent Cruz win in that car, and William Walsh go to victory lane in the car, and Gio Rogerio showed some really good speed in the 18 this year. It's not surprising or shocking to see that at this point. So for Andres, I hope he can run really well with Nice. I think he's going to have a decent chance and opportunity to do that, but we'll see what happens at this point. Meanwhile, the driver drive the 77 makes a lot of sense. Corey LaJoie, we all know Corey will drive that truck for the remainder of the season. Corey LaJoie, in my opinion, I think he's going to be okay in that truck, in all honesty. I think that truck actually will be more competitive than 07 at this point. There's decent crew chief working with that. I think it might be Chad Walter who's a crew chief, if I'm not mistaken, at this point. So I would have to think that truck will show some decent pace and speed, with Chad having prior experience with other people like Roger Cruz, proof, of course, who he won with actually in 2024 last year at Las Vegas. I would expect that Corey will show some decent pace and solid speed. We'll see how things go for the 2025 remainder of the year. Corey could be full-time in that truck. I talked about Brendan Butterbean Queen, though. I think Brendan Butterbean could potentially be a candidate to go full-time next year with Spire Motorsports with 3 trucks. I would think they're going to be a 3-truck team next year more than likely. So we've had a downsizing at this point. And again, Andreas Perez will move on to go to another team and new organization for the remainder of the 2025 season. And we'll see how he can do with Nice. I would expect him, like I said, to be with that team for the remainder of this year and then maybe go there full-time once again in 2026 as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major stories of today's episode as we're talking about NASCAR's silly season once again. Now, we did a silly season update on the channel yesterday. If you haven't checked it out, I suggest going and checking that video out. But I touched on a few interesting things in regards to that in that video. Some of those rumors have been circulating over the course of the last couple days. Let's begin by talking about a hotbed rumor. It is expected going into 2026 that Kaden Honeycutt, who is no longer at Nice Motorsports currently at the moment, it is expected that Kaden Honeycutt is probably going to be joining a top truck organization for the 2026 year. And it's heavily speculated currently at the moment that that is going to be the number 11 truck for Tricon Garage in 2026. Kaden Honeycutt is one of the top prospects, in my opinion, in NASCAR currently at the moment. And I think Kaden has earned the right and opportunity to get a really solid chance and a really strong opportunity with this truck. Considering the 11 truck has been the fastest truck in the Craftsman Truck Series the last 2 or 3 years combined, and has already had 6 wins this year with Corey Heim, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. Kaden Honeycutt, in my opinion, has outperformed that equipment over at Nice Motorsports the last year or so, and I would not be surprised or shocked if before the end of the season, considering Homer Friesen already has a win this year with Stuart Friesen, who won't drive that truck for the remainder of the year due to his unfortunate injuries, I would expect Kaden Honeycutt to be doing very, very good in that truck for sure for the remainder of the season. And I look at going into next year, with Kaden most likely moving into that truck, how do I think he's going to do next year with Tricon? Well, with him likely going over to Tricon, I think he's going to be a championship contender. I think Kaden, while maybe not be on the same level of Corey Heim's talent, Kaden is a really good driver, and I think he'll be the best driver at that organization. One, he's going to be working with one of the best crew chiefs ever in truck competition, Scott Cipodelli, who's won championships, of course, with Brett Moffitt a few years back, and has won a lot of races with other drivers over the years of competitive with people like Ryan Truex as well. And other drivers like Austin Hill, who are really good in the truck series. Say what you want to say about Austin Hill being a driver that might be over-aggressive. He did win a lot of races over Hattori Racing back a few years back. So I would expect Kaden Honeycutt to be very good. The guy can do really well in underfunded equipment. He was actually contending for a top 20 with Young's Motorsports at Watkins Glen before they had electrical issues. Not many drivers have done that good with that equipment in the past. So I think Kaden will be ready to be a Tricon Garage driver next year, and I would expect that to be the case going into next season where you see him in that truck, and I think he'll be very fast and really competitive with that team most likely in 2026. So expect Kaden Honeycutt to be full-time with Tricon next year. This would mean that Corey Heim will not be back in that truck in 2026. The big question is, where is he going to go next year? Well, there's been a couple rumors out there around Corey Heim. Some think he might go to the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2026 and join up with Sam Hunt Racing. He will not go to Joe Gibbs Racing because, of course, there's a feud between him and Ty Gibbs. Joe Gibbs seems to be a little bit petty about him being working with Ty after something that happened at Elko like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I don't know what they're doing to not be teammates at this point. But Corey Heim, obviously, in my opinion, is more talented than Ty Gibbs. No disrespect to Ty, but Corey Heim has proven that he's had a pretty good career at this point. He is currently under contract with 2311 Racing, and his base starts with Sam Hunt Racing so far this year. So there has been talk he may go to Sam Hunt Racing for next year. However, I mentioned this in the video. There is now a lot of chatter, and keep in mind and take this rumor with a grain of salt. This comes from the Daily Downforce, and the Daily Downforce is a parody account to the Daily Downforce. And for a very long time, this account posted a lot of fake things. However, they're starting to get some information out there and things that are correct. They were 5 days ahead of the Andreas Perez news, and now it's been confirmed that there might be some chatter around this as well. A rumor that's been circulating is that he could drive the number 7 car for Spire Motorsports next year and be on loan from 2311 Racing. Now, they do mention that that Denny Hamlin and people over Toyota might be trying to push for him to go there. Now, they also did a follow-up tweet as well that regardless of what manufacturer he goes to, he still will be tied very closely to 2311 Racing. This would be very similar to Chris Buescher when he drove for JTG. He was under contract at Roush, and then, of course, when Ricky Stenhouse Jr. struggled those few years, he got brought over to RFK in 2020. I think this could be a likely potential possibility for Corey Heim next year is going over to Spire in 2026. There's been a lot of chatter that Justin Haley may not be back with that program next season because he has absolutely been struggling at times this year, though I will say he's not been doing much worse than Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez's name has also been brought up as a possibility, but I think he's going to go to Junior Motorsports next year more than likely in the Xfinity Series. More people talk about. Chris Knight has mentioned it now as well, and I trust Chris Knight quite a bit on some certain things, so I would expect that Suarez is going to go over there. I don't think Suarez is also an upgrade. There's not really a lot of good cup rights at this point. If I had to choose between Corey Heim and Justin Haley, I'm going to go with Corey Heim. Now, probably be only a one-year deal, and you also got to think about this as well. Corey Heim and Carson Osbar, they don't really like each other. They have a history of not liking each other, so I would think that'd be absolutely awkward if he truly would end up going there in 2026. So we'll have to wait and see. If you're 2311, if you're Toyota, you need to do what you can to keep Corey Heim in your program. If you lose Corey Heim to Chevrolet, especially with Spire paying a lot of money at this point, if you lose him to Spire and Chevrolet, you're going to be in trouble because you do have some good prospects. I get you got Brent Cruz coming up, who I think is really talented. You've got guys like Taylor Gray, who I think have done solid at points this year, and Williams Walsh, who is starting to figure out in Xfinity. You don't have a lot of really good prospects who I think are future superstars right now. If you lose Corey Heim, that is a massive, massive loss and could be a big pickup for Chevy, who might be losing other prospects. We know Carson Quaffle might have signed a development deal with Penske. We know some other drivers who could be on the move from the Chevrolet camp in the future. And I think that you look at Corey Heim, if you got to choose between Heim and Haley, I'm going to go with Corey Heim. Again, this just is a rumor currently at the moment right now, and we'll see if that rumor does end up becoming factual. The final rumor to talk about is Chris Buescher. Now, the Daily Downforce put out this rumor out there that apparently Chris Buescher has not picked up his option currently at the moment for the 2026 season with RFK Racing. But they do note in the post as well that it's very likely he is going to return to RFK Racing in 2026. They do not expect him to move to another team and organization next season and will stick around with the program next year. I would expect the same thing as well at this point. There's not another better team at the moment, and yes, Chris Buescher probably is just looking for a better deal at the moment. There's talk about the lawsuit at this point. Again, I don't expect anything to change for Chris Buescher at the moment. Again, I do think he will sign that extension with RFK, at least for the next couple of years. He has been really, really good with RFK. He's been a consistent guy. He's been able to get you wins. He won last year, Watkins Glen, got 3 wins in 2023. And in general, in 22, he got a win as well. He's looking for his 4th consecutive year of at least 1 victory. I think he'll be a threat to win before the end of the year as well. He's been the best RFK Racing driver consistently, and is someone who could be an easy round of 8 contender in the playoffs if we get there. So we'll see what happens with Buescher, but I expect Buescher to stick around. I'm taking that one more for a grain of salt at this point. But who knows what's going to happen there. Plus, there's not another better team outside like Hendrick at this point. Again, the Corey Heim stuff, certainly interesting. I think there's a chance he will end up with Spire next year. We'll have to kind of wait and see what happens on that story going forward into the future. And we'll see what happens with Honeycutt, but I expect Kaden Honeycutt to be with Tricon Garage in 2026. So that is going to today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go some more of that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What do you think? Do you think Corey Heim will end up with Spire or Sam Hunt Racing next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what do you think about Kaden Honeycutt potentially being with Tricon and Andreas being with Nice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today, we'll have Truck Series race picks for this weekend at Richmond. Tomorrow, we'll have Cup Series race picks for the race at Richmond. Also, we'll have the paint scheme video for this weekend as well. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll have the truck review. We'll have reactions Cup qualifying and a NASCAR news video as well. And then on Saturday, we have reactions to the Cup Series race, along with, of course, the starting lineup video as well. And then, of course, we will also on Sunday have a silly season predictions probably for 2026 and other big content dropping as well. And 2027 silly season predictions is probably coming at the end of the year. For those wondering, we got content coming up. People like Haley Deegan, Sheeman, Gisborne, Carl, Skirbush, Cobblish, Balls, Ross Chastain, Shaw, the Creed, Sam Mayer, Kyle Larson, Chase Light, Ryan Priest, Cletus Savard, Dodge, Ram, Call Racing, Spire, Will Brown, Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.